So as per usual, I'm a little bit late to talk about this, but I think in this case that's a good thing because I've had time to hear and digest all of the various hot takes and perspectives on this, so I'm not just coming at it from a reactionary way. And that's not to say that the emotions that came up for you after reading this article weren't valid. I definitely responded in a very visceral way after reading it because it reminded me of so many other experiences that I've had with men. And after talking to several of my female friends about this, I realized that we all had a story like this. This kind of experience is not uncommon. So I think it's really important that we talk about this and break down exactly what went wrong in this encounter and potentially why. If you don't know what I'm talking about, last month an article was published in an online magazine called Babe, where a woman describes a sexual encounter she had with actor, comedian, and writer Aziz Ansari, in which she refers to it as the worst night of her life. I'm gonna be real, I've seen a lot of bad takes on this. A lot of bad takes. I think one of the most unfounded claims that I've seen about this is that this woman was doing this for attention, which is an accusation that a lot of women receive when they talk about their experiences with being violated. First off, this woman doesn't use her real name. She uses a pseudonym, so I don't really know what she has to gain from this. Another thing that I saw a lot of people say was that if she was gonna smear Aziz Ansari like this, that she should have had the courage to use her own name, like it was her obligation or something. Grace referred to this as the worst night of her life. So the fact that she experienced that, had her consent violated, and then somehow it's on her to like put herself out there publicly because she talked about something that someone else did, it's kind of fucked up. I think it's essential to acknowledge that a lot of times when women and just people in general are pressured into sex and then they speak about it publicly, they are often blamed for it or told that they should have reacted differently or they receive backlash or harassment for it. And I completely understand why someone who was already violated wouldn't want to go through all of that on top of it, especially when there is a very low likelihood that their perpetrator is ever going to face any consequences, statistically. Another common response I saw was people hyper-focusing on whether or not this legally constitutes rape or sexual assault. And I think that would be important to consider if she was actually pressing charges, which to our public knowledge, she isn't. Because I've seen a lot of people getting really caught up in arguing that this doesn't constitute legal sexual assault because it doesn't fulfill this and this and this. That would be important if we were having a discussion of the legality of this situation, but this is just a woman anonymously describing her own experiences and how consent was ignored. So instead of getting really hung up on definitions, I think it would be more useful to focus on where exactly consent was ignored and the importance of paying attention to communication, both verbal and nonverbal, in sexual situations. And just in general, because consent doesn't only happen in the bedroom. I also think this is really important and necessary to explore because we often only see one or two types of sexual assault and sexual coercion narratives in the media, and those narratives are often really black and white, whereas this story has a lot of gray area, and I think most of our life experiences will exist in this gray area, so it's important to talk about it and break it down and make it applicable to everyone's lives and experiences and like all that shit. I think we should always consider boundaries and consent in every interaction we have with other people, not just sexual interactions. Also, it doesn't have to be black and white, this is rape, this isn't rape, in order for an experience to be traumatizing to a person. It doesn't have to be rape in order for it to matter and for this conversation to be important. The biggest and most frustrating response I've seen in this story is the assumption that Grace didn't explicitly say no, and therefore it is her fault for not communicating effectively enough. I want to point out that in these situations, a lot of the communication that we have with other people is not verbal. And even if a person doesn't explicitly say no, you should still look at their body language, whether or not they're pulling away from you. Are they uncomfortable? Do they not seem excited to be engaging in any sexual activity? Those are all really important signs to be paying attention to, especially if it's with a person who you've never slept with before. Of course, I want women to feel confident and empowered enough to firmly say no, but that's really idealistic and not where a lot of women are at right now. Like, I personally have been in situations where I've felt comfortable enough to be assertive, but I've also been in situations where I haven't felt comfortable, either because I didn't know the person that well or there was like a weird power dynamic. I'm not 100% confident that there won't be a time where I'm with someone who I really look up to and has a lot of power in the industry that I want to work in and is really well known and well respected. I've never been in a situation like that, and I can't say with confidence that I wouldn't respond the same way. It's hard to know how you're going to respond until you're in a situation like this. A lot of women are raised to be polite and affirming and to go along with things. We are often taught that we're not allowed to say no and we don't have that agency. I wish we lived in the world where that wasn't the case, but that's the world we live in. I also want to point out that politeness is often used as a de-escalation technique in these situations. I've been in situations where strangers on the street have harassed me and had the potential to become violent, and I was really polite because I didn't want to make them more angry. I worried that if I was too assertive, I would come off as rude, and that would anger the other person, and it would only escalate the situation even more. A lot of women have also internalized the idea that the main thing they have to offer to other men is sex. Like, as a feminist, I have worked really hard to unlearn this, but I still have felt bad when I've turned down other dudes and felt like I owed them something, or I was being a buzzkill for not wanting to like have sex with them. Overall, I think it's important that if you're trying to initiate sex with someone, particularly women, it's essential that you continually check in with them. It's essential that you pay attention to their body language and whether or not they might be uncomfortable. Do they look uncomfortable? Are they having a good time? Are they responding to your touch enthusiastically? Are they pulling away from you? These are all really important cues to pay attention to during intimacy. Absence of a strong no doesn't necessarily mean that something is consensual. It really just means that that person doesn't feel comfortable around you to speak up. Hey friends, this is Sick Feature Marina, so I apologize for the fact that my voice sounds like a human garbage disposal. Today's video was brought to you by the 1 in 3 campaign, and they're doing really good work, and this is a super important issue that I don't see talked about enough, so I'm excited to be able to help shed light on it. Abortion is incredibly common. It's been a guaranteed constitutional right since 1973, yet there's still a lot of stigma around abortion. We don't talk about it, and too often we don't stand up for the people who are denied abortion care. Jane Doe is an undocumented minor being held in detention by immigration officials. Because of Texas's laws, Jane, like others under age 18, had to appear before a judge for permission to get the abortion care she needed. She also had to raise her own money. She had to get an unwanted ultrasound and submit to a long waiting period. And even after she had done all that, the Trump administration blocked her from getting an abortion. The Office of Refugee Resettlement oversees the centers where undocumented minors are detained. The head of the ORR, Scott Lloyd, refused to allow Jane to be taken to the abortion clinic for her appointment. But this hasn't happened to just one undocumented immigrant. This has happened to several undocumented young women and will continue to happen unless the policy is changed. The Trump administration will stop at nothing in their abuses of power. They specialize in attacking already marginalized groups, like young people, people of color, Muslims, immigrants, and LGBTQ people. Immigrant rights, racial justice, and economic justice cannot be untethered from reproductive health, rights, and justice. This is a really important feminist issue and one that I don't see talked about enough, so if you'd like to learn more about the undocumented Jane Does, watch the 1 in 3 campaign's Abortion Speakout on February 27th. It's going to be streamed on 1in3campaign.org from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. EST. I'm also going to link an article below with more information about this if you want to read up on the issue more. Also, if this is an issue that speaks to you and you want to help raise awareness, you can use the hashtags 1in3speaks and Justice for Jane.